Motherhood in general isn't always looked up to and can get a bad rap. And in the social media circles, there are entire accounts that are focused on talking about how terrible it is and their children and everything in a negative sense. We're not about that here at Little by Little Homeschool. And today's guest, Kirsten Vossler from Rejoicing in Motherhood. I mean, what an amazing title. She is going to bring some joy to you today in this episode, but also just some reality, because we all need to know that it's not just us that is experiencing the highs and the lows and the hard times. We're all in the trenches, sometimes in different trenches because of different seasons in life. But today she is going to just blow you away with this, the down-to-earth encouragement. And wait till you hear her story of why they homeschool and how they got into it. I think it's really going to encourage you in this season of your life and also for future seasons and future generations of homeschoolers. So stick around. I know you're going to be encouraged by this episode.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Lee Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course, because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
Welcome to today's podcast episode, A Little by Little Homeschool. I am excited to have a special guest here. So welcome today for being here, Kirsten.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited for this.
Me too. I'm excited about this topic. It's going to be a good one. Can you start us off and share a little bit about who you are, your family, so that we can get to know you better?
Absolutely. Well, like you said, my name is Kirsten Vossler. I have been married to my husband, Nathaniel, for nearly 16 years. And we have 10 children who are from the ages of almost 15 down to a 5-month-old. So we have a lot going on. It's a pretty fun, exciting, busy home all the time. And we homeschool. I'm going to have 7 students in school this year, which is kind of wild. So we'll get into that. But we live in Idaho in the USA, and we just have a little bit of property. We have some chickens and a garden, and we just are loving our life.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, we are definitely going to get into this a little bit as well. And so can you share your story of how you guys became a homeschool family? And then why did you choose to homeschool?
Absolutely. So for us, it was actually a really easy decision. I was homeschooled all the way through K through 12. My husband was homeschooled several years throughout his school career, sometimes in school, sometimes homeschooled. And so we came into marriage actually ready for a family and had already talked about homeschooling. And so I knew from the beginning, like, this is what I want to do. I had seen it happen in my own family. I'm the oldest of 3. And so I saw my mom homeschooling us, obviously, and then actually had the opportunity to go help another mom who had 8 kids. And when I was a teenager, I would go to her house and kind of help her with some of her homeschooling too. So I knew it was possible. I had seen it in action and I was ready to go. So it was an easy decision in that way. One of our really main core things was that we really wanted to disciple our children. And discipleship, like, our children are going to be discipled by someone and by something. And we believe that God gave them to us to raise and train. And so we really wanted to steward all these lives that he's given us and disciple them into a relationship with God and into a biblical worldview and just all of those other things that we knew we would be able to do better if they were in our home and with us consistently. There's a few other reasons that I love homeschooling for, and one of those is the personalization of their education. Just, it says in Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he's old, he will not depart from it. And we just see every one of our children is so unique, and they each have a special gifting and calling from God on their lives. And so homeschooling gives us the opportunity to customize and personalize everything for them so that they can have that solid training and education to get them the most benefit for what they really are made for. And then, of course, flexibility. The flexibility of homeschooling is a huge bonus. So my husband is an entrepreneur and has his own business, a family business with his brothers. And so we're able to take vacations or do things like kind of on off times. And homeschooling gives us an amazing flexibility to be able to do that. Or when we've moved, to be able to take time to have a little break or just adjust our schedule in different ways that we needed to, or visiting with family, all those things. So the flexibility of it is a true bonus.
There's a lot to unpack there. Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
The fact that you were homeschooled. So were you homeschooled all of your years from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Okay. How did they even hear about homeschooling? Because that would have been, I'm not trying to age you or anything like that. But
no, I'm 41.
80s, 90s. Right? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm 41. So yeah, it was late 80s. How did they hear about it? You know what? I don't even actually, we must have had some friends that homeschooled. And the interesting thing is, so my mom was a trained teacher. She went to college. She majored in German, French, and English. She was a language teacher for high schoolers. And she was like one of those, like, I'm never going to homeschool. I don't believe that's, a good idea, all of that stuff. And then she had kids. My parents, they weren't able to have children for 13 years into their marriage. And so then they had gotten saved. They got married, unsaved, got saved on the same day, which is so amazing. And then went to the mission field. They were in ministry, did a bunch of stuff, and then just couldn't have kids. So they were just crying out to God for children. I was born, yay. And then as they just came into parenthood, they were like, okay, time out. Kind of this similar story to what I'm saying is just like God was showing them, like, listen, you're discipling these students in your Bible school. Well, guess what? I've given you these children that need to be discipled too. And so they shifted, like, just total turnaround of perspective. And we're like, okay, the best way to do that is we're going to be homeschooling them. And so, yeah, we got connected with some other homeschoolers and they just went for it. So yeah.
That's a great story. Please pass on thank you to them. I always want to make sure that I say thank you to those that were the forerunners that were doing it when it was illegal or semi or questionable. So I so appreciate the parents that just said, this is what we're going to do in the face of this maybe not being completely legal quite yet.
Yeah. Yeah. We lived in California. And so in the early days, I don't even know like what kind of hoops they had to jump through. I know we joined HSLDA like immediately. And yeah, that's Homeschool Legal Defense Association. If you haven't heard of it, anybody, and they're still around today. So they're still doing amazing things today. But we did that. We were in the era where we didn't go to the store during school hours. We stayed in our house or in the backyard, like we just were trying to avoid, like, it wasn't illegal, but we were trying to kind of just stay under the radar a bit, So it's amazing to be homeschooling now in this era where it's very commonplace and, everybody knows about it and it's totally accepted. And it is amazing to see how that's changed over the years.
And we have the freedom to just go out and about and not have to worry about anything. And there's always people that ask, oh, you have off from school today? You're like, no, we're homeschooled. And everyone's like, oh, okay. And then you just go on. No one's calling CPS or anything on anybody. But I so appreciate and love the intentionality that you and your husband had in talking about your children's education. That wasn't anything that my husband and I talked about. It wasn't even a topic. There was, you go to premarital counseling and there's a list of things to talk about and it's not on that list and it really should be, but I'm seeing that parents now are talking about that even before they are a parent, even before they have kids. I'm hearing from mothers or about to be mothers saying, we're talking about this now.
Yeah.
And my kids will even say that that's one of the things that they're going to talk to their prospective spouses about and say, are you okay with this? When they actually sit down and find out, are we compatible? Do we have some of the same goals? And we know in marriage things change and shift and everything, but that's important enough to them. So that is so, I just love it. This is just so fantastic. I absolutely love it. And I love your reasons for homeschooling, that discipleship of our children. It's so important. And even more important than the academics or their SAT scores or which colleges they get into, because it's going to carry them even further. And then you talked about the individual education. So true. And with you having a wide range of children and a wide range of ages and probably personalities. We kind of talked a little bit about that before we hit record here, about different personalities of children and being able to provide just individual with them and the flexibility. Oh, I so agree with that. It's just so freeing, right?
It
to be able
is.
to order your life, and then homeschool just kind of fits into the cracks at times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that my mom always was really good at articulating was she always would tell us, we're doing, in fact, she would change it and she would say, we are doing home education, not homeschool.
Yep.
Because she was from, that background of like, school is, this time to this time, sitting in a desk, da, 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 da. And so she always made a point. She's like, it's home education. You're learning all day long. Everything you're doing, whether you're washing the dishes or you're peeling carrots for a salad, like this is education. This is all part of the things that you need to know for life. And so I think that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that we do have that opportunity to be just educating as we live.
I really like your mom. I've not met her, but I really like her.
You would. You guys would get along really well.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I use the term homeschool. I mean, it's in the title of my podcast and the name of everything, because that's what everybody's familiar with.
Yes.
But I'm like, really, it's home education. But if you keep saying home education, people are like, oh, you sound all stuffy and all this stuff as if you're, hoity-toity about it. We're like, no, just homeschool. I'm like, but yeah, I don't like the term either, because it has the word school in it and you feel like you have to replicate. But that's a whole other conversation. Today, we want to talk a bit more about having younger children and how do we juggle all of this. So most moms, they already feel like it's overwhelming. They've got some babies, they've got some toddlers, and they're thinking to themselves, I can't even imagine home educating my older children. Maybe these are parents who haven't started to home educate and they're thinking there's no possible way that I can pull my kids out of school and do this. Or maybe they are already homeschooling and they're saying, I'm really having a hard time with this. It's really overwhelming. So what is it like homeschooling many children at once and then having toddlers and babies around at the same time?
Well, I have to start by saying, like, I fully understand the overwhelm, and I would be 100% lying if I said I never get overwhelmed now. That's not true. There are definitely times when I'm just like, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And so we all have that. And so I think don't exclude yourself just because of that. Don't just automatically assume I can't do it because I'm already overwhelmed. There are overwhelming times and we can get through them. Like, we can do this. But I have learned one of the ways to kind of quiet the overwhelm is to really focus on what am I supposed to be doing? Not what my culture says I'm supposed to be doing, not what social media thinks I should be doing, any of those things. Like, I just need to focus on, like, what am I actually called to? And when I can do that, it's like the noise and the chaos just kind of falls away. And I have the ability to take a breath and then move forward and kind of know, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Here's a first step I can take. So every family is going to be different when it comes to schooling, educating, whatever we want to call it. Every family is going to be different, and family dynamics are going to change every year, because every year, and I think this is something really helpful just to say it out loud, is that, like, every year you have a different age of child. Every year you might have more babies or somebody moves out, like, it's constantly shifting. And so we can't expect that we're going to start with kindergarten and then we're just going to move through and nothing's ever going to change. Like, that's not true if you have one child or if you have 10 or more. Every year's new. And so you need to be free to change up things that you need to change. And just like we were talking before, another piece of this is that life is education. When we're doing meals, when we're doing dishes, when we're caring for little babies, that is all education. Maybe we're caring for mom postpartum and our kids learning the truth about, like, okay, mom needs a break, mom needs rest. That's all education. And that is so valuable. That's not something that they could learn sitting in a desk in school. They might mentally hear, probably not actually, but they might hear moms need to take a break after they have a baby. They need to rest. They need to sleep. They need to eat nourishing food and they need to, nurse their baby a lot or whatever. But our little kids are learning that because they're seeing it happen at home. And that is a beautiful education. Maybe we're taking care of aging grandparents. Maybe there are lots of different dynamics and things that people have in their lives. And all of those things are education. I think there's a scripture, which I'm sure you've all heard before relating to homeschooling, and it's Deuteronomy 6:6-9. And it says, "You must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commandments that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road, when you're going to bed and when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." So I think the thing I see in this is that when we're teaching, we're educating, it doesn't have to be exclusive to one particular location or time. It is all the time. And I just love how he says, repeat it again and again. And so I've been thinking a lot recently about, when we feel like I've said this thing to my kids so many times, like, when are they going to get it? And it's like, the Bible literally says, like, just repeat it again and again. And I'm like, there, I can hold on to that one. That's really good. So kind of another practical thing is just realizing like your family is a team and leaning into that. Family team is key. We are all here to help each other and we're all on this journey together. And it's okay if things shift and change and if you have to make adjustments to fit things in. I think if you're feeling overwhelmed, I think it's a good thing to stop and go, okay, why am I feeling overwhelmed? And try to take, 10 minutes, if you can get, just 10 minutes of quiet and just be able to write down a list, like all this stuff is on my mind, and this is why I think this won't work. And then when you do that, you might realize like, oh, there's actually a lot here that doesn't have to be there. And even assumptions, like the assumption that we have to be sitting at the table or sitting in a desk for 6 hours or 12 hours or whatever, amount of time per day. And that's what school looks like. And I have to replicate this perfectly at home. That's not actually true. And it's amazing how fast kids learn when given the opportunity in a peaceful setting too. So I know I kind of just exploded on that one. So do you want to pipe in anything there?
Yeah, those were, I completely agree with everything. So all of life is education is what I'm hearing you say, is that we need to remember that and incorporate it. And it doesn't have to fit into a box. And there are times where you have a newborn and you might not get to all of the subjects that year.
Yeah.
And things will balance out. I think we're just so fearful that it's not going to balance out. And sometimes in some scenarios, there are some moms whose husbands get really worked up and really afraid and really fearful that if you take those couple of months off, say you have a baby in the middle of the school year, that you take it off and then their first or second grader is going to be behind some way. Mm-hmm. And hindsight is 20/20 when you get through that and you see, oh, they actually turned out okay. And learning, I love that part about children learning, and you have older kids. What a great experience for them to see that mom. So your oldest is 15, you said?
Yeah, almost 15.
Yeah. So, and it is a boy, right?
My oldest is a girl. Yeah.
Okay. A girl. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I have 5 boys and 5 girls. So they're all mixed in there.
Oh, so fun. So fun. But either way, your boys look and see, and they'll remember that someday when they are married and their wife is exhausted and say, oh, it's not just her. And how can I help nourish her and take care of her during this time of postpartum? And your daughters will see, oh, it is okay to take that time to rest, because to be honest, I didn't have that experience at all. Again,
yeah,
I just kind of thought I'm supposed to bounce back right away. I didn't have any friends that had any babies and thought I had to bounce back, and looking back now, I should have done postpartum quite differently. And I love that there's so much information about that now, but your family, your kids are getting that experience of seeing this is actually the reality. And God wants mom to rest. She's just been through a lot. And this baby has a lot of attachment that they need to do with mom and how they can help out. And I love that question that you said of asking, why am I overwhelmed? sometimes the overwhelm. And I think the downside to the internet and social media is that we can be overwhelmed by what we're seeing and thinking we're supposed to be doing more than we really need to be doing during that time where we have little ones at home. So how about a practical question here? We have some toddlers. We know that some of them, again, depending upon personalities, are into everything. They're climbing the refrigerator. They're here and there. You got to keep an eye on them all the time. But you have some kids that you want to maybe do math lessons with. What are some ideas of how to accomplish some of the curriculum that parents want to accomplish?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think it's a question I ask myself every year. Okay, now what? Now what does this dynamic look like this year? Who needs to be occupied the most? Okay, so I think the first thing is just to remember that babies and toddlers are part of our home. And sometimes they can join us, and it's okay if there are interruptions. I think we always just have to be, I have to be constantly reminding myself, it's okay that we're getting interrupted right now. This is not the end of my other kids learning, right? Just because we got an interruption, we can pick this back up. And because we're not trying to recreate a school classroom. This sounds really basic, but do school when it actually works for you. Do your mom-centric topics when babies are either napping or when they're most likely to be occupied. So right now I have a 5-month-old and a 1.5-year-old. He's 21 months. And so we're taking a school break right now, but I know coming up here in a couple months, we're going to have a 2-year-old and we're going to have like a 7-month-old. And those are pretty busy and hands-on ages. So I'm already starting to think, okay, how are we going to do this? What are the things, when are the times that 2-year-old is going to be the most occupied? And that's when I'm going to plan to do the mom-centric stuff, the math or the language arts where I have to give them spelling words or do those kind of things. I'm going to center those things around the times, probably when he's napping because he is consistent on when his naps are. But I've definitely done times where I would be like, okay, I'm not the mom that has the special little basket of the toys that only come out at school. I'm just kind of like, okay, today, why don't you just do Play-Doh? Okay, today, why don't you do Magna Tiles? We have stuff, but I'm not organized and strategized. I've got other kids I've got to teach stuff to. So the toddlers might have to find their own toys. So that's okay. If you're the mom that has every day a different set of things for your toddler, amazing. I bow to you and I admire that so much. But that's one of those social media things that I have to just go, that's so cute. I love that. And I'm not going to do it because that's just not, it doesn't work for me. So
it's like I love that for you.
Yeah.
And then they might look at something you do and say, well, I love that for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's giving that grace. Yeah. That's awesome.
Exactly. We don't all have to be the same. So I've also had, because I have older kids, occasionally I have had times when I said to my 10-year-old, for example, okay, this block of time, you are watching the toddler and you're going to take them and do XYZ project for 15 minutes or half an hour, whatever, something timing appropriate and to their level of skill and ability. And then I have those minutes or those half hour to work specifically with these other kids. And I did that. I strategically did that last year because he was 1 and I was like, all right, this time block, I need to do algebra with my teenager at this time. And so you're going to take this guy for 20 minutes and then you're going to take this guy for 20 minutes because I have a few older kids. And so we would work that through. So that's always a possibility. Now, a few years ago when all of my kids were 8 and under or whatever, that wasn't the same. And so but also remember, you don't have to be doing school for 5 hours in a row. With an 8-year-old, it's maybe 1 or 2 hours of actual mom time with the 8-year-old for the school subjects. You can do this quickly. Another thing that's been really helpful for me is that I chose to use a curriculum that is easy to teach many kids at once. And so it's Sunlight. If anybody wants to know, I use Sunlight curriculum. And that way I can kind of group my kids in different blocks and I can teach 2 or 3 children the same science and history and read alouds. And we're doing this all the same thing together. So it's not like I have every single subject for every single kid. And I mean, it's interesting. The more I go on and the more kids I add to this, homeschooling bundle, the more I'm thinking, okay, how can I incorporate the same thing for everybody? Like, what else can we do? I mean, I've heard of homeschooling families who had a wide age range of kids and used one curriculum for all of them. And then obviously you would have math and language arts separate because those are more level specific. But there's so much you can do with combining people, and that helps a ton. Some other just like fun, practical things, like if everybody's just getting distracted and it's just too much chaos going on to do, sometimes I'll just call an audible and we'll do like a jumping jack break. And we'll just be like, okay, everybody get up and do 10 jumping jacks. And it gets everybody moving. It gets everybody involved. I mean, even the little toddlers can be just hopping around trying to do their little jumping jacks, or sing a song or something. And it just kind of resets everybody. And then you can take a breath and go, okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is you go play with him and I'm going to talk to you about this. And it kind of resets and you can take that, you have a new baseline to start from. And I heard another homeschooling mom who's been at this for more years. She gave some really good advice one time. And she said, if you get really bogged down, focus your attention on the kid who's closest to graduation, because the other ones will all catch up when it's their turn. And I've taken that to heart because I know there are times when it feels like the most important thing to do is to teach my second grader spelling. But because of that, I'm not going to have time to work with my high schooler on, algebra or something. And I'm like, actually, maybe the spelling can wait a little bit. We can pick that up tomorrow, next week, whatever. If this person needs some more help here, she's older, she's closer to being launched. I'm going to focus my attention on that for right now. And most of the time, everything gets done. But if there are people that have to kind of wait, it does make sense to kind of focus on the older ones for that focus time if you have to. And it kind of frees me up to be like, okay, you know what? If we miss spelling this week, it's going to be okay. We'll pick it back up.
I agree with that advice. And I give the same advice to moms. And it is important, especially when you have a high schooler then. They're getting ready to launch. You're trying to get their last couple things done. Maybe they want to move on to college. And so you want to have those courses done and have them prepared for college. But what I hear you saying a lot of is just understanding that homeschooling, especially when you have little ones, again, it doesn't last forever. Mm-mm. They all do grow up, but there's a lot of flexibility that's needed, a lot of grace, and it's not going to be all structured. Like we were saying, homeschool shouldn't be called homeschool. It should be home education because we get stuck in that school thinking, and we didn't get our 2 hours in today. They have probably learned way more than you even think that they have by going outside and playing in the backyard and interacting with one another, and just understanding that each day isn't going to be tied up with a neat little bow. It's going to be different.
Yes.
That's okay. Yep.
Yeah, that is
we're talking about. Yeah. So let's go to younger ones, but let's talk about preschool. And I know you have a story about how you canceled preschool. Can you tell us about how you did that, what all that is, and then how did that change your perspective on home education?
Yes, I love this story. This was just my entrance, my toe dip into homeschooling when I first was starting. So like I said, I grew up homeschooled. I helped other people. I had this amazing idea, like, okay, it's going to look like this. My oldest was 4 and I was like, we're ready for preschool. This is going to be so fun. And got the little whiteboard and the little table and, started looking on Pinterest and like printing out all this stuff to do and little crafts and little, how to make A's and B's and C's and, all the little handwriting stuff. And I just thought, this is amazing. She's really smart. She's got such a high propensity for learning. This is true, actually. But I just was so excited. Oh boy, this is going to be great. So she was 4. I also had a 2.5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I was pregnant with my 4th. And so I had a lot going on, but I was so excited. And so we started preschool and we got into it. And I think we got like 3 days into it. And I was it was terrible. It was terrible. We both hated it. She was crying about it. I was crying about it. I was like, how I can't even teach you. Like, you're so stubborn. Why you got to hold your pencil this way? This is so fun. Isn't this fun? And I was just so frustrated. And we were both just having a terrible time. And so I just was like, I'm not cut out for this. I guess I can't do this. I'm too scattered. I don't know what's going on. Apparently I'm not supposed to do this. I'm going to have to send her to school. I'm so discouraged. I don't want to, like I've been planning for this my whole life. And here I am failing at preschool. And I remembered that I had seen an article that I had pinned, like how to homeschool preschool. And I was like, well, maybe I should go back and read that again. And so I went back and I read it. And basically this mom, so wise, she said, here's how you homeschool preschool. You read books on the couch and you snuggle with your kids and you play outside and you just let them be children. That was essentially her advice. And I just started crying because I was so relieved. You mean I'm not going to like destroy her potential if I don't like get her reading by the time she's like 4.5, And I realized like, okay, I'm thinking about this all wrong. And so I just was like, all right, preschool is canceled. We are not doing preschool. And so I just put away all the stuff and we just lived our life. And I have a photograph actually that I took, a picture that I took on my phone. We went to the park like the next day after this cancellation. And I'll never forget it. Like there was just so much joy in my little children. They were just swinging on the swing. I was pushing them on the swings and we were just having fun together. And I was like, this is what it's supposed to be like. This is what I want out of my motherhood. I don't want to be stressed and stressing out my poor little kids because I'm so anxious and demanding that they do this exact thing right now when they're 4 years old. And so preschool has been canceled ever since. And I have chosen, I don't do preschool. And now I just say that. I don't do preschool. I have a little girl right now who just turned 5. And man, she would have loved doing preschool this last year. But no, you don't get to do we don't do preschool in our family. We just do life. And life is education. And I was, so concerned at the beginning of having my kids like be on track, be on target, like line up with their peers and all of that stuff. And the interesting thing is I went back, I think it was like in February of that next year. So kind of toward the end of that first like quote unquote preschool year. And I was looking at a list of like what every kid needs to know before they get to kindergarten. Right. And I just started going down the list and I'm like, well, she knows that. She knows that. She knows that. She knows that. Like she literally filled out the list just by living life without any pressure on my side, without like just by living life, she learned everything she needed to know. And that was just such a testimony to me of like, you know what? Life is education. And if we can just focus on what's actually important, get our kids' hearts, have them feel loved and safe and valuable and learn how to be kind to their siblings and, all of those things. When we're putting in those repeating things again and again, that's preschool. That's kindergarten. I mean, that's 10th grade. Let's be real. Like all of those are the most important things. And so that's the story of how we canceled preschool, and it has stayed canceled, and it's been the best decision I ever made.
I thank you for that story. Sometimes we feel like we shouldn't share stories like that. And I think it's so good for us to do so because we share our vulnerability and we share our story and it encourages other. And that article that you had pinned, that mother gave you permission to let it go.
Yeah.
And so in this episode right now, any of you that's listening, that's stressed out about this, doesn't mean that maybe you won't still try. But if you get to day 3 like Kirsten did and you quit, it's okay. She's telling you right now, she's giving you permission to just let it go. If that is what is going to then hinder your relationship, if you were crying and she was crying, and it's not going to help the relationship. And I love that you're able to see from that list that she still is okay. And I'm sure now you probably don't even pay attention to those lists or anything because you know that this works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like all of you mamas listening that have little ones, whether it's your oldest or your youngest or anywhere in between, Yes, be free. You do not have to force them when they're little tiny to do stuff. And I feel like it's like a mission of mine, actually. I was talking with a friend, a local homeschool friend, and she was telling me like, oh, my son is just not quite reading yet. And he's getting really, and she's like, he can tell anytime I'm getting into like teaching mode that he immediately checks out. And I'm so concerned. And I was like, well, how old is he? Is he like, I thought he was like 6. I was like, is he 6? Like, maybe he just needs a little more time. And she's like, no, he's 4. And I was like, what? I was like, cancel preschool.
Yeah, it's just that mindset that we have that they have to accomplish certain things. And the school system has it, everything is so systemized and they have their method to it. And they say X has to happen by this certain date. And we think that kids are not going to be successful. And I mean, we're not even going to get into all that. That would be a whole nother couple of episodes just about the school system and how it's established and what the purpose of it. And that when we stop and think about how kids were learning before the modern American school system, they were learning. I mean, when we go back and look at things that were written, the Declaration of Independence, all those historical writings, there are some that I have picked up and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And it's not those historical ways, but just older authors. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, I don't feel very smart. And I've been through the school system and my daughter's an avid reader and she can pick those up and she knows exactly, what's going on. I'm like, wow, you're smarter than me. So what was that show? Like, you're smarter than a 5th grade. My kids have all excelled in different areas and I love it. And I'm so glad. I would rather that they did. But thank you for being here today, Kirsten. Thank you just for that permission slip, we'll say, and that grace and just the knowing that if a mom wants to cancel preschool, she's not the only one. I have my own story of preschool and kind of canceling it, and we won't go into all that. Again, that's a long story. Not really a long story. Well, that's another episode. But how it wasn't worth it for all of the tears and all of the drama and everything. So thank you. Where can the listener continue to learn from you and to be encouraged by you?
Well, I love talking to moms and encouraging moms. So I have a website, KirstenVossler.com. And I also have a podcast called Rejoicing in Motherhood. And I love just encouraging, inspiring, and equipping moms to rejoice in this amazing gift that we've been given of motherhood. So wherever you're listening on this podcast app right now, you will be able to find it. So just type in Rejoicing in Motherhood and you will see my face. And, and there we are. And we can connect there too. So would love to connect with you.
Perfect. Thank you. I will drop those links in the show notes. But Kirsten, thank you. This has been encouragement to me. Please, like I said in the beginning, tell your parents thank you, that I very much appreciate it. They don't know who I am, but just say thank you. I love to be able to thank those that went ahead of us, and it's just an encouragement. But thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom with us.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
How about that story she shared about canceling preschool? Have you been there? Have you done that? Or maybe you are planning your preschool and you're thinking, okay, I have permission to have a little bit of grace and to do things differently. I shared my story and a little bit more about preschool in an episode that some people weren't too excited about, but others really found a lot of freedom in it. And I will drop that in the show notes along with all of Kirsten's links. So I highly recommend and encourage you to go listen to her podcast, jump over to her website, see all that she has to offer, and find that joy that she has, and the fact that, yes, motherhood is hard, but it's also a really good thing. And it's something that we get to do alongside our children, and we get to form those relationships, and that our time now as homeschoolers really is a way that we can pour into our kids and disciple them. So check out the links in the show notes for that one episode I mentioned, as well as being able to connect more with Kirsten. So thank you for listening to today's episode. I am sure that you thoroughly enjoyed it. I did as well. She is an absolute gem, and it was my pleasure to be able to have a conversation with her. I will see you back here on this podcast really soon.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.